Josh, you're in Missouri.
I'm in Missouri. Yeah.
How did you like slip and fall? And
Missouri's a great place to visit.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
not so much in July,
I've
but
heard. Yeah, I've heard that, I don't know. I'm not sure which is worse, the humidity or the bugs.
well, either. I mean, you can just take your pick.
I think they kind of like there's like a synergistic hell
Sure.
that
I mean, you
the
can
bugs and
look at it that
the
way.
sweat
Yeah,
with the bugs, they just stick to you and
that's true. That's true. But the good news is once they stick, you know exactly where they are. I
that's true.
mean,
Then they can be
that
swatted all
they
the
could be
easier.
swatted. Yeah, there's some upsides to mosquitoes and ticks and
Chiggers.
chiggers and
You
yeah,
know, the other night we had that big rainstorm here. It was
yeah,
hailing
yeah.
and tornado watch. I don't
Hmm.
know if you had a tornado
Oh
watch
yeah,
yet.
no, the sirens went off.
Oh, did they?
Oh yeah, but tornadoes are different, right?
Yeah,
Um, I
tornadoes are scary.
a little bit, yeah. I've
Yeah.
I've been in a couple. Worst
Okay.
earthquake I was ever in. I got stranded in a Walmart in Indiana.
Okay.
That was horrible.
Hmm. Yeah.
I was ready to take my chances with the tornado. I'm like, just let me out. I think I can manage. But no, didn't hit us. We watched the
That's good.
weather. We watched the radar, and it was well away. And I guess there was one that touched down just outside of town, but we were good.
You've heard that. Everyone's heard the saying, "It's raining cats and dogs."
Yes.
My my oldest boy, who's quite a comedian, he came up with the Missouri version.
Okay.
Says it when it was hailing. It's hailing ticks and chiggers.
That's true. That's true.
So
That's
that's what kind of
yeah.
combines
Yeah.
the weather with the bugs there.
Exactly. No, it's yeah. It's good. Well, you know what? We've really enjoyed it while we've been here.
Yeah. You know what the best thing about Missouri is?
What?
The people who are here.
Yeah. Yep, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And yeah, we've loved everyone we've ran into. It's been good. I mean, I can't complain one bit. And really, I work inside most of the time now. So when it
Mm.
gets uncomfortable,
Hmm.
I'm just gonna turn up the AC. I mean, that's, rough
Well,
rough duty, but
modern
I'll take it.
people. Yeah.
I know, exactly.
Modern people.
Exactly. So, dude, big stuff, right?
Yeah. So I mean, there's a lot of big stuff happening. I mean, we're in Missouri because we're partly to visit,
Right.
and partly because we're on our way to Kirtland
Right.
to watch the eclipse.
Yeah.
So, which is
Now you said you
coming
were
up in a couple days.
Yeah. Now you said you were going to name the time and date when the Savior's going to return, right?
Yeah, right. No, no.
No, no.
No, I don't play that game. But I will say that we're closer than we've ever been.
Well, that's good. See, I figured, the DOC folks get away with making baseless claims and
Oh.
allegations, and I just thought I'd join.
Thought I'd join.
So yeah,
No, I
that's
have
all.
no predictions to make. In fact, we're going to be talking about the Red Heifer, which is why you bring that up, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, Red Heifer. So, have you been following it at all?
I have been. I have been a little bit, not
Okay.
probably to the depth you have. The last month we've been busy, and it seems like the news of the Red Heifer really got started as far as when I started paying attention to it, probably a month ago.
Mm. Well, the Red Heifer wouldn't be so interesting or so newsworthy, I guess, like worldwide
Hmm.
newsworthy, if it weren't for the fact that the Jews want a temple. They
Right.
yearn for a temple, and that's the real newsworthy thing. That's what makes it newsworthy. Um, and I think as Latter-day Saints, we can appreciate that
Sure.
yearning for house of God on the earth, a place where heaven and earth overlap, so to speak, and where a place where we can be made, where we can be sanctified, be made
Right.
holy, and where God's presence can be felt. And but there's a problem to that. I mean, well, let me back up, I guess, or continue with this vein. So, if you've never been to one personally, which I haven't, you've probably seen them like dramatized in movies or something. Every time there's like a Jewish wedding, they always like step on
The
the
glass.
wine glass, right,
Yep.
and break it. And the wine is symbolic of this joy of the occasion, but then they break the glass to remind themselves that even in this most joyful moment, that there's still this sorrow that we live with uh, for lack of the temple.
Right.
Yeah. So it's I mean it's deep in it's deep in their culture. Every time there's a Passover during the Passover Seder, and at other times too, like they pray that Jerusalem will be rebuilt and that the temple will be rebuilt, and may it be in our days and like speedily, like now, like we're ready.
Right.
We want that. um, so, but for many of the Jews, they can't just build a temple anywhere,
Right. There. Yeah. No.
right? So Latter-day Saints don't quite feel those constraints. And I don't know that ancient. I mean, Jerusalem is a holy place,
Hmm.
um, but there are examples of other Jewish temples. But they all the other temples, and of course we know about Book of Mormon temples, which were when I say Jewish, I mean, well, I guess they were. I mean, they were from the Southern Kingdom, but Law of Moses temples, Aaronic temples, I would say. But still, even though there have been temples built in other places from time to time, still Jerusalem is the place. I mean, and it's not only the place in their minds. This is the place in the scriptures too. This is the place in, excuse me, in prophecy, um, where things are going to be rebuilt. So, um,
I've said this before,
yeah,
but I feel like it bears repeating. There are a lot of similarities between Judaism and Mormonism,
Mhm.
right? I can't think of another religion that puts its modern day worshipers intentionally in the footsteps of the ancestors,
Yeah,
right? I mean, if we look
right,
at we'll just take the Passover since we're there, right? As we were talking before, and I think you pointed this out in your talk on Sunday at church. You said, um, you started out by saying, let me tell you what the Lord has done for me.
yeah,
Now, to my knowledge, you've not been to Jerusalem yet, correct? And at that time, or Egypt,
yeah, and
um,
yet I have,
and yet you have, right?
I have,
And
yeah,
and now let's draw and they do that with everything, right? Whether
yeah,
that is um the Feast of Trumpets, whatever it is,
yeah,
it's hearkening back to that, right?
yeah,
And it's experiential. It's not enough just to read it. You got to live it. Now, if we look at things like temple worship, if we look even at the sacrament, um, I think everybody who was a Mormon at some point went on some sort of trek to reenact the
yeah,
pioneers trek. It's the same motif, right? It's the
yeah,
same idea of it's not enough just to read and know. You have to experience.
yeah,
And I think that really got amped up, certainly for Judaism with the loss of the temple, right?
yeah,
Because they had to work doubly hard to have those connections, no matter where they were dispersed to, whether that was Europe, whether that was somewhere else in the Middle East. There's always that string, that rope that connects the modern day to the
yeah.
ancient.
And I think the another way of saying that is like this similarity between Mormonism and Judaism is that it's really religion to be a religion to be lived now, a
Mhm.
religion to make the world better,
Right.
right? Because many other religions, although there's threads of that, it's not necessarily the focus. The focus is the next life,
Right.
and we're looking forward to the next life, and there's and Mormonism and Judaism believe in the next life as well, but we also believe that we don't have to wait and shouldn't wait until the next life to experience
Yeah.
God's presence and to make ourselves into godly people and to make the world around us uh, a holy or heavenly place as far as we're able to do so,
Right.
right? And that comes with there's just kind of some physicality to uh to the religion,
Yeah.
right? And it's Mormonism is, if it is what we claim it is, which is a restoration of the Israelite faith, then obviously we have some resonance
Mhm.
with Judaism. which is another branch of, I would say, the branch of the ancient Israelite faith.
Well, and to go along with that, Joseph Smith he made some interesting remarks about Judaism, right? He had said that, there's the prophecy that I think will tie in here where the sons of Levi offering up sacrifices again in the temple in righteousness.
That's right.
And furthermore, the whole Book of Mormon was geared towards the convincing of Lehi's seed as well as Jews and Gentiles.
Yeah.
And so the Judaism is not lost within the restoration.
Oh, not at all. Yeah, actually, just speaking of temples, of course, the very first temple in this, in the Latter-day Dispensation, was the Kirtland Temple, which has been in the news lately, which is pretty exciting. I said we're planning on going out there. I've never been out there, but really looking forward to that. But in our Doctrine Covenants section 109 is the dedicatory prayer for the temple there. And it's very interesting that in Joseph Smith's dedicatory prayer for this temple, he at the same time is praying for the temple in Jerusalem.
Yep.
So in starting at verse 61, I have it up here. It says, "But thou knowest that thou hast a great love for the children of Jacob who have been scattered upon the mountains for a long time in a cloudy and dark day. We therefore ask thee to have mercy upon the children of Jacob, that Jerusalem from this hour may begin to be redeemed, and the yoke of bondage may begin to be broken off from the house of David, and that the children of Judah may begin to return to the lands which thou didst give to Abraham their father."
Okay.
Right? I mean, this is a prayer for the building of Jerusalem, and it's not just so that there's a nice place to live. It's so that the temple can be rebuilt and Jerusalem become the holy city that it was anciently and is prophesied to be. So, other places, of course, we have you mentioned the Sons of Levi, okay, and we have we have that in Doctrine and Covenants 128, I think, but also it's quoting really, and it's in Third Nephi as well. The Savior actually says, "Hey, there's these prophecies from my prophet Malachi. I want you to include those." So Malachi chapter 3 says that the Lord shall purify the sons of Levi and purge them as gold and silver, that they may offer an offering unto the Lord in righteousness. I actually messed that up a little bit, but yeah, and then shall the offering of Judah and Jerusalem, so we're talking about the temple, be pleasant unto the Lord as in the days of old and as in the former years. Yeah, so that's what we're looking forward to. So what does all of that have to do with the Red Heifer? Well, a lot of it has to do with the third temple. So, of course, the first temple. When we say the first temple, we mean Solomon's temple.
Okay.
Okay. Of course, before that they had the
tabernacle.
Tabernacle. So yeah, you might call that the zeroth temple. I guess I don't know.
Right.
The zeroth temple, and then the first temple was Solomon's, and then of course Solomon's temple was destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonians. And then that was rebuilt. Ezra and Nehemiah were part of that. Somebody was called Zerubbabel's temple. He was kind of the governor of Israel, and that temple, the second temple, that extended up until through good times and bad, extended up until Herod's time, when Herod expanded it. And then it was sometimes called Herod's temple, but he didn't rebuild it. He just kind of expanded the temple and the temple complex.
Gotcha.
And made it more glorious. But that was the second temple, and of course that was destroyed eventually by the Romans, by Titus, 70 AD. So, and that was nearly 2,000 years ago.
And that was
a long
beginning
time.
Of the diaspora, right? Now the Jews are flushed out of their homeland.
Yeah,
they are,
which was mentioned in the
Kirtland
temple dedication.
And so they go into Europe, they go into the Netherlands, they go everywhere. They end up eventually. Some of the first people that came. This I found interesting. Do you know what else was happening about the time Christopher Columbus was coming over?
Yeah, the Spanish Inquisition.
Some of his first passengers were Jews
100%.
trying to escape.
Yeah.
And I find that very interesting that from the beginning there seems to be this call, right?
Yeah.
This connection that and I've had people that I love and respect fight me on this, but
With Columbus or what?
no, with what I'm about to say here, that there is something more than just blood that somehow links America with Israel.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And you can see it all throughout the founding of this country.
Oh, yeah, they were planning on establishing a new Jerusalem. They were the new
Yeah,
Israel.
I mean Winthrop
Yeah,
was very clear on this, right? That the
Yeah.
God of Israel is going to dwell amongst us, and so they saw it as a continuation of Israel's story.
Right.
And so I do find that very fascinating. That
And of course, as Mormons, I think that fits right in. I mean, we
Yep.
believe that
Yeah.
that those European colonists and pilgrims and their descendants were remnants of the lost tribes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Scattered Ephraim, Manasseh,
Yep. And
Asher, Gad, right?
and so yeah,
all the rest.
they're dispersed throughout the country. I mean, throughout the world. Israel, for the most part, is abandoned. I mean, there's a few outposts hanging around, but by and large, it's not a Jewish state like we know it today.
Yeah.
And then I can't remember the date, but Israel is then brought back in. I think it was Eisenhower, wasn't it? Who was it? Or was that Truman? I think it was.
I don't remember
Truman.
the president.
I think it was Truman.
I
But
know it
don't
was the
quote me.
Balfour Declaration.
But
Lord Balfour in
yeah,
the UK that.
yeah. And that president, it was either Truman or Eisenhower, and I apologize, I'm blanking on it. But that particular president said that he remembers learning on his mother's lap that someday the Jews would get to return to their homeland. Oh yeah, no. And so when this all comes up, he writes, I remember hearing about this from my mom, that this is a prophecy, and I feel the workings of the Lord here.
That's
and
amazing.
I gotta push this through.
Yeah.
And I'll be darned if he doesn't get that done. He gets them back home, so to speak.
That's amazing.
But by that time, Dome of the Rock is there, right?
Correct. Yeah, the Dome of the Rock was I don't remember the year, something like six
Yeah.
to 700 AD, something like that, right? In the Balfour Declaration and Allenby, I can't remember his full name, the British general who picked it. That was like 1917,
Right.
when Britain kind of gained control of it. So back to Columbus. I mean, I have some more things to say about that because this is interesting stuff.
All right.
Have you heard theories? There's some very good evidence that Columbus was a Jew, a crypto Jew.
I have heard this, and I don't, based on the things I've seen, that's not out of the realm of possibility, right? I think you can make a real good case that he definitely comes from Jewish stock, so to speak. I do think he does have a conversion to Jesus.
No doubt.
Because even on the ships, right? The three ships, when it looks like he's about to get mutinied, right? I mean, things are not looking good for Columbus at this point. He writes, he feels like he's on an errand from God.
Yeah.
And so he's feeling something. But yeah, no, I don't doubt for a second he had you. As you look at some of those records, it looks pretty compelling.
He actually leaves, and not only does he take some Jews, like he takes Hebrew speaking Jews with him, because he anticipates finding 10 tribes. Like, he intends finding remnants of Jacob in the New World.
Yep.
And he intends on I was gonna say he actually delays the day of his departure until the very last day, like when the decree in Spain is convert, leave, or die.
Right.
And he waits until then, and then sails away with no apparent
Just yeah,
reason to
right.
necessarily to delay, other than it just coincides with this. And it's also interesting that he says that his at least part of his motivation for um, seeking the riches that they might discover is to fund the rebuilding of the temple in Jerusalem.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you cannot, like, if you took this script to Hollywood, they'd be like, get it out of here. This is unbelievable. This is, give me the Avengers fighting aliens.
Right,
That's
right.
more realistic than this story.
Might be. Yeah.
But you see these
So amazing.
threads just woven all the way through from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And it's hard to make the case that there isn't something there, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's worth exploring.
So the third temple is talked about in Ezekiel quite a bit, and um, and this actually ties in with the red heifer here, because and the gathering of the Jews and all that. So this is Ezekiel 36, starting in verse 24. For I will take you out of the nations. I will gather you from all the countries and bring you back to your own land. I will sprinkle clean water on you, and you will be clean. I will cleanse you from all your impurities and from all your idols. I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit in you. I will remove from you your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. So, um, actually, I mean, sometimes you might. I remember reading that first time, like when I was a missionary.
Sure.
I was like, sprinkle you with clean water, like, oh, this kind of a supports baptism by sprinkling. I don't really like this, but
Right.
I didn't understand that this sprinkling with clean water, this is actually a reference to
Yeah.
the red heifer.
Okay.
So here Ezekiel is tying the gathering with the sprinkling and with the red heifer, and to purify them. And then this is in Ezekiel 36, but then Ezekiel like 40, and for several chapters he talks about the third temple.
Okay.
So this is actually a prerequisite.
Okay.
Okay.
So this is before the third temple can be established.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. So so this is one of the problems with rebuilding the temple, is that the Temple Mount, we talked about these, like, warfare has been going on the Temple Mount between Jews and Muslims, and between Gentiles and Muslims and whatever. And the problem is that the problem is the impurity of death. So in the Torah, it says that, this is in Numbers chapter 19, is where it talks about the red heifer. It says, if anyone has touched a dead body, or even been under the same roof as someone with a dead body. So if you've been to a funeral, you have picked up this particular kind of impurity. Or if you have stepped on a grave, have you ever walked through a cemetery and stepped on a grave? Then and you and most of the people in the world have done this at one point or another. And so this ritual impurity, the impurity of death, has spread to almost everyone, and to also not only to people but to the places too. Like I said, the Temple Mount itself is no doubt
sure
impure. I mean, people have died there.
Yeah.
Many people have died there. And according to the law, there is only one remedy for the impurity of death, and that is the red heifer, the sacrifice of the red heifer.
So let me ask you this, and it may not matter, because I'll explain here in a second. Is this a commandment that comes from like the one of the 5 books of the Torah? Does
Yes.
this okay? So this
Numbers chapter 19.
So this is there's no way that this was something invented by the Pharisees or Sadducees, right?
Correct.
Because we had some of that going on. You can only walk your horse this far.
Now I will say that just like all of the other commandments, they have the rabbis, who are the Pharisees, the descendants of the Pharisees. They have their interpretations of what the scriptures are commanding, and And I wouldn't say they're necessarily unreasonable in this case, but you do have to kind of draw the line somewhere. So, I mean, the scripture says red.
Right.
So the rabbis say, well, how red is red? You know?
Oh, okay.
And I mean, you've got a red beard, looks like.
A little
Yeah, a
bit.
little bit of red, but not all, because I see a
Yeah.
bunch of
I
white
got
there. It's
I got some gray. Yeah.
very distinguished, but disqualifying if I were to say you have a red beard.
Right.
It's only partly red beard. So how many white or black or off-colored hairs are allowed in a cow? The scripture doesn't actually say. So you have to decide. And the rabbis have decided that if there's two hairs, black or white, next to each other, there's actually a bunch of rules about how close the hairs can be before there's too many to disqualify it, and whether you could, if there is a white hair, whether you can just like pluck it out, and that's
Okay.
okay or whatever. Um, yeah, but so there's details in the interpretation like that, and my wife Melissa, she gets frustrated sometimes that, like, why don't they just go ahead and do it? Like they have the cow and they're just waiting, and my answer is, well, the scriptures might not actually say to do all the things that they are, all the it might not detail all the stringencies that they're taking, but I guarantee that those stringencies that they are observing will ensure that they do it at the right time
Right.
and not too soon. And it will be just on time, right on time. Whatever happens, it'll be right on time.
I suppose you'd want to get this right. You know what I mean? And erring on the side of caution here might not be a bad thing.
Yeah. So now, interesting. This is so important because this particular kind of impurity, the impurity of death, is more serious than other kinds of impurity.
Right.
Most other or many other kinds of impurity that the Torah mentions, it just says, you wash, you bathe and wash your clothes, and then you're good. You wait until evening or whatever, and you wash yourself, you're and then you're pure again. But this kind of impurity, where you've come in contact with death, can only be removed with the red heifer. So it's a very kind of lasting kind of impurity, like I said. So okay, so red heifer. And when we say red, we don't mean scarlet or crimson.
Right.
We mean like reddish brown, like a red Angus. So
Okay.
if you've ever seen a red Angus,
Yes.
I'm not
Pictures.
talking. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Usually you just look at them on the hamburger, right? On
Yeah,
the
I
bun.
do. I
Yeah.
do. That's when they're the most delicious.
Yeah.
So yeah,
They're all red on the inside. Is
all
that?
red on the
Yeah.
inside. Right.
So
Yeah.
we're talking about red on the outside. And according to the rabbis, and they even need to have red hooves.
Whoa.
Okay. So we're talking totally red. And
And these heifers are all for purifying people and places, right?
yep, people
That's
and
what this is
places and
all
things.
about.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's right. So let's actually go to Numbers chapter 19. And we'll probably refer to this a few times here. Um,
Sorry, man. My scriptures look like a coloring book.
it's all important. So, okay. It's actually really interesting because, like, just how it's hard for me to stress. If I probably failed to stress how important this is. Um, Joseph Smith actually said, "Salvation." You've probably heard this before. Salvation is nothing more or less than to triumph over all our enemies and put them under our feet. And when we have power to put all enemies under our feet in this world, and a knowledge to triumph over all evil spirits in the world to come, then we are saved. As in the case of Jesus, who was to reign until he had put all enemies under his feet, and the last enemy was death.
Okay.
Right? Death is this most pervasive, um, most persistent enemy that will be the last one to be overcome. And the red heifer is symbolic of this struggle, because it is overcoming the stain, the impurity of death. So it's interesting that in Numbers chapter 19, it starts off, this is the decree of the Torah. It almost as if saying this is like the pinnacle thing. This is the purpose of the whole thing. And then it gives the instructions for the red heifer.
Okay.
So it says, speak unto the children of Israel that they bring thee a red heifer without spot, wherein is no blemish, and upon which never came a yoke. So there's a bunch of things there already that are interesting, and the first one that comes to mind is that this is something that Israel is supposed to do, not not Judah,
Okay.
but Israel.
That's interesting.
Israel is supposed to provide the red heifer. So, of course, yeah, that's interesting. It ties in with what we were talking about earlier about Israel being scattered and Israel really being the lost tribes, of which Ephraim is the chief.
Right.
Right. So, okay. Let's see. I have a list here of. I'm just going to go to. We can read, but I have this here. So, so the cow has to be a minimum of 2 years old. So in its third year of life. And the reason for that is because it says, it actually says a heifer. So a heifer is a female
Right.
cow. So in Hebrew, that's a para. And there is also another Hebrew word for a calf, and it doesn't use that word. So it has
Okay.
to be old enough. So that's 2 years plus some. Okay. And you may have heard some say that like we want it between 2 and 3 years old. Have you heard that?
Right. Yep.
There's actually not the scripture doesn't list, and also in the rabbinical tradition, there's not an upper limit, but there's a preferred there's an effectively an upper limit because just like your beard and my beard,
Oh,
right?
it's great.
The older it gets, the more likely there is for disqualifying things to happen.
Right.
Either the animal gets injured, or it starts to grow white or black hairs. So we wanted to be 2 years old at a minimum, and they usually do 2 years old and a little bit just to make sure.
Right.
And then hopefully before 3, is like the window that we're looking for. Okay. Needs to be completely red. We mentioned that already. All physical blemishes, okay, need to be. You can't have any, right? So it can't be lame or blind, or can't even have its ear tagged, whatever. Which is hard to find
Oh yeah.
livestock that doesn't have its ear tagged. I mean, there's laws about that.
Absolutely.
So there's an interesting story about that we'll get to later. So, and then as I read here, it cannot have had a yoke on it, so it cannot have been used to do
Not
any
a
work.
beast of burden.
That's right. Yep. And let's see. So heifer, as I mentioned, also that's a female cow, but it also implies a female cow that has never been pregnant.
Okay.
So this cannot be a mama cow.
Right.
And they even keep it away from the bulls, like
Right.
even if they don't even want it to have mated.
Right.
So those are basically the requirements.
So back in the day, were there like herds of red heifers just wandering around Israel? I mean, what was going on?
We don't know. I don't know if we know how common red cows used to be in Israel. But I will tell you how common the red heifer sacrifice has been. According to the Mishnah, there have been, since the time of Moses until the present, there have been exactly 9 red heifers offered. So, which is in, I don't know how many thousands of years that is too. It's like in 6,000 years, well, 6,000, 5,000 years or something like that. 4,000 maybe.
So we really don't have any information if there were some readily available in case an old Jewish guy had a heart attack on the Temple Mount.
Yeah, no, I don't think that there was only 9 because the heifers were so rare,
Mm-hmm.
but rather because they're so potent, and only a little teeny bit is needed. So what they do is they would take the cow and take it to a clean place outside of the the camp or outside of the city. So historically, this was done on the Mount of Olives,
Okay.
and is interesting. In ancient times, they had built a causeway that went from Jerusalem, like across the Kidron Valley and up to the Mount of Olives,
Okay.
and it was made of this like uh, archways stacked on top of archways, so that the arch above was directly over the pillar below
Okay.
to protect the people and the cow from the possibility of stepping onto a grave that's an
Oh,
unknown
wow.
grave down below.
Okay.
Okay, so they build that, and then the cow, would be would face the temple, and they would ideally they would face in the scripture in Numbers it says the front of the tabernacle, but they understood that to mean that like the doors and the curtains are supposed to be open so that they can when the sacrifice is done they can like look into the Holy of Holies. They don't go
Gotcha.
into it, but they look into it. And when they kill it, they catch some of its blood, and then they sprinkle it in the direction of the Holy of Holies
Okay.
7 times. So now there is no temple now, but the plan is to sprinkle it like in the direction of where they think the Holy of Holies is or was. Okay. Um, and then they take the blood and the cow and the whole thing. So a lot of times in other sacrifices, the animal is kind of parted out,
Right.
and sometimes the dung is cleaned out or whatever. And but in this case, everything, the skin and the dung and the guts and everything, and even the blood that they caught, they put it back with the cow, and everything is burned with 3 other symbolic ingredients. Has to include cedar wood and hyssop, which is something in the oregano family. Hyssop was also, if you remember, hyssop was the thing that the Israelites used as a paintbrush to put the blood on their
Right.
doors. Okay? And hyssop was also um, the plant that was used to like lift up the vinegar with gall
Oh,
to
okay.
Jesus
Yep.
while he was hanging on the cross. Okay? So hyssop, and then also scarlet. So did I say so? Cedar, hyssop, and scarlet. So red, wool that was dyed red,
Okay.
and those things were wrapped together in a bundle and thrown on there as well.
Was gonna say it was starting to sound like a tasty recipe, right up to a point you got the red wool.
Well, yeah. Um, so when it's all burned down, then they gather up the ashes, and then it just takes just the smallest amount of ashes mixed with spring water, um, and then this water is used to sprinkle on people, and you don't have to be immersed in it, just the smallest drop. Actually, they'll dip hyssop in it again and like
Yeah, is
fling that on
that
you.
just for the priests or
No, everyone and everything,
everyone? Okay.
everyone.
All
That's
right.
right.
Interesting.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is it doesn't take very much. Like the ashes will last a long time.
So it's not like they need a whole herd here. They just need
Correct.
one.
Yeah, one, and it's not just the ashes from it's not just the cow. It's also all the wood that was used to consume the animal, which is I don't know if you've ever tried to burn an
Yeah.
animal down, reduce it to ashes. It takes a lot of wood. So there's going to be a pretty good pile of ashes
Yep.
when they're done. And when they're done, they mix all those ashes up just and make sure that there's no bits left. Make sure everything's powder. Make sure it's like homogeneous, and then they go from there. So the last time, um, let's see. I think I have it. The last time was actually before Jesus's time. Let's see. Where was it? I want to say around the year like 15 to 19, something like that. Oh, here we go. 15 to 16 AD, something like that was the last
Okay.
time this was done. Now, here's the interesting thing, though, is in the Mishnah, um, there's a famous rabbi named Maimonides, and he says that there's been 9 and there will only be 10
Ooh,
before Messiah comes. Like Messiah will, like this will, the 10th one will usher in the Messianic age.
interesting. And this would be number 10.
This would be number 10. Now, what's it's doubly interesting because I think there's 2 number 10s. Okay, because the
Okay.
this is the new math.
This is
This is the new
is
math.
this Common Core math?
Yeah.
Or am I about to get an education?
So of course the 9th one was like 15 to 16 AD, and then Maimonides says the 10th one will be done by the Messiah. And
Okay.
so there's really some amazing things here because like that connect with the atonement that Jesus did a few years after the 9th one, right? Another 15 years later or whatever.
Right.
So what are the similarities? Well, it's interesting. I mean, of the sacrifices in the law, like which one would you most readily associate with the atonement?
Oh, it would be the Passover.
The Passover, right? I mean, it was on the Passover. He's called the Lamb of God.
Right.
And he was killed on Passover, right? And there's many other things that go, like the freedom from Egypt and the freedom from sin, and the unleavened bread, and like, and he says, "I'm the bread of life." There's so many things, but there's just as many things that connect Jesus with the red heifer, actually.
Okay.
But amazingly. So the red heifer was one of the few sacrifices that were actually offered outside of the city. So and Jesus was killed outside the city.
Yeah.
And not only was he actually executed, but excuse me, this is just at dinner with Dave and
My bad.
delicious tacos. So not only was he actually executed outside the city, in Golgotha, Calvary, but he was also performed kind of the prequel in Gethsemane, right?
Right.
Which was also outside.
Well, I find it interesting. It's Gethsemane where the Savior sweats great drops of blood.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some symbology there for sure.
Gethsemane is on the Mount of Olives.
Right.
And yeah, that is where Jesus becomes red.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
Which is what we want, this cow that's red from head to toe. And here Jesus is sweating blood from every pore. He's red from head to toe.
Yeah.
On the Mount of Olives where this is done. Okay.
Hmm.
Other elements. Along with the death of the red heifer, there has to be hyssop. Is that there with
Right.
Jesus?
Yep. Yeah, it's cross.
Has to be scarlet. And that's maybe not as obvious, but when the Romans are taunting him, they actually, Matthew says, they put a scarlet robe on him.
Yep.
And mock him as King of the Jews.
Yeah, that's right.
And then cedar. Where's the cedar?
The cross itself.
Yeah, that's right. Now the New Testament doesn't say, but there is a long like an ancient Christian tradition that the crucifix was made of cedar wood, or at least the crossbeam was cedar. So those elements were present in Jesus's death. Now, there's more. Okay, so how long was Jesus's ministry?
33 years, right?
Oh no, just his. That's how long his life was.
Oh, just his ministry, 3 years.
Yeah, 3 years ish, right? And there's scholars debate kind of on that. That's kind of beside the point. But when the red heifer is born, when a red heifer is born, we watch it for like 3 years to make sure that we watch it for that time to make sure that it stays qualified and doesn't disqualify itself. Make
Right.
sure that it's pure. And Jesus does this, right? He has a ministry where he's observed and really is without blemish.
Right.
Okay. Um, and then of course there's the amazing thing that the sacrifice of this red cow is the only remedy for the impurity of death, is what undoes death.
Mm.
And of course, well, with the Passover we have like freedom from bondage and tyranny. With the the goat on the Day of Atonement, we have freedom from sin, and with the red heifer, and these are kind of the big three. The red heifer,
Right.
we have freedom from the impurity of death.
Right.
And Jesus really, in his atonement, he hits so many uh, nails on the head with all three of these things. It's really quite amazing.
Now let me ask you this. Since 15 or 16 AD, when the last time this was done,
Yeah.
has there been any red heifers born that would have passed muster? Is that anything we even know about? Because like I'm trying to gauge just how rare these heifers are, right? Is this just a simple case of, well, there's no use in producing them because we're all dispersed? I mean, what?
No one's been looking.
Okay.
So I can't tell you, but I will say, interestingly, that of course Israel is kind of reestablished as a nation and celebrates their Independence Day on the 14th of May, 1948.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what's happening in so that's the land of Israel. What's happening to the dispersed Israel? So, and by that I mean wherever Ephraim um, is that there was a Scottish breed of cows called Scottish Angus,
Okay.
and those get crossed with some English breed, and they come up with the like American Angus.
Gotcha.
And American Angus are mostly black,
Oh, okay.
but there is a recessive gene that black Angus have that will produce red cows.
Really?
Yeah. So, and if you breed red cow to red cow, then they just have, they're doubly recessive, and so they breed true, and their offspring are also red. And up until um, this kind of people kind of started to take note of these red cows about 1917, and then by about 1945 in the U.S. there were some herds of Angus cows that were entirely red.
Okay.
And then so that was 45. In 1948, Israel declares independence. And then in 1954, the Breeders' Association of Red Angus cows in America was established in Texas. So, and then by 2008, there's almost 50,000 of these red animals ready. But basically, that kind of explosion in the red cows didn't really of totally red cows. There are other kinds of red cows like Hereford, I think. They're the ones that have like red with like the white base.
Right.
Those are obviously disqualified. But the totally red cows, that really grew in the United States like after Israel was established, and not because
I was just gonna say.
not because of Israel, or at least the Texas ranchers, they weren't thinking that at the time, but there was just the hand of Providence was leading
Okay.
more than one thing at a time.
That's what I was gonna say. As Americans, we're pretty good at capitalism. So my first thought was, or were there a bunch of ranchers in Texas like, they're gonna be needing them red heifers?
Right.
And then it went for it. But it doesn't sound like it was a coordinated thing, right? All of a sudden, these recessive genes just start making a re-emergence.
Yeah, and we say, hey, that's kind of an interesting cow.
Right.
Let's grow those.
And up to this point, there's never been one that's passed muster.
That's correct. And there have been quite a few, actually. The first one was actually in 1996. Her name was Melody. But she was pronounced unclean because she grew white hairs at the tip of her tail, which was actually a very common thing. Like they start growing it on their tail and like their eyebrows and stuff first.
Right.
There was another one in 1997, and then in 2002, and like 2008, 2010. Now, and then 2014. And then in 2018, even is the most recent one before the most recent one, which were red cows that were brought to
But
Israel in
that
2022.
that one from 2018 didn't pass muster either.
That's right. None of these other ones that I mentioned. Eventually, by the time they got old enough, they'd all started to grow too many white hairs, or maybe some other thing happened. I don't know. I don't know the details on all of them. But there's a group in Israel called the Temple Institute.
Mm-hmm.
And it is their goal to facilitate the rebuilding of the temple, the third temple, and to reinstate sacrifice.
Okay.
And they have done an amazing job of it. I mean, they have produced all of the utensils and the menorah and the altars and the priest's clothing and the high priest's clothing um, and have flocks and herds of animals that are ready, and they've also like trained up this next generation of Levitical priests on how to do all of their duties, and they are like at the ready. They have I think they even have all the bricks and like the blocks like of stone like
So they're
ready like in a warehouse to like assemble when the time is right.
So like they are literally waiting on a cow.
They're waiting on a cow, and I will say they're waiting on a cow, which is going to be the key. Like once the red heifer is sacrificed, that is the beginning of the third temple.
Ooh.
That is okay. Whether the building is there or not,
Right.
that is. And the other thing about it is, there's no expiration date on the ashes too. Like they could do it at any time, and they might wait. 50 years to build the temple,
Because
but
yeah.
they have the ashes then, and so then when the time comes, they can do it. Now,
Because the only thing the blood's used for is to sprinkle in the direction of the Holy of Holies, right?
that's right.
Everything else is ash.
Ash, yeah, mixed with what they make this
Right,
really
right,
dilute
yep.
spring water
So
mixture.
yeah, that if there's no time limit on that, I mean theoretically, there's a possibility if they didn't want to rile like Hezbollah up or anything like that, they could almost do that at any point and keep it on the DL, right? I mean,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So there's really two impediments to rebuilding the temple. We
right,
mentioned one is the impurity of death, which the red heifer is going to do, and the other one is the impurity of Islam.
right.
Well, careful what I say.
No,
But
you're good.
yeah,
I say way worse things. Usually about the DLC.
it's the Dome of the Rock,
right?
And the Al-Aqsa Mosque,
Yeah.
which are both up there on the Temple Mount platform.
Now help me out on this because I've heard that for so long the tradition has been that the temple sat literally where the Dome of the Rock is now.
That is correct.
Now there's
which is why Muslims are so worried.
right.
And everyone else who's paying attention is going to be worried about it too, because
now let me ask you this. There's been some archaeological work to suggest that maybe it was offset a little bit from that. How much veracity is there to that? Because I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, how
I think there's kind of three. Well, there's several possible options. Okay. One, and I think this is probably the most prevalent opinion, is that the Dome of the Rock has got to go. And if and when that ever happened, that would certainly bring to pass the apocalyptic prophecies about Armageddon and the nations of the earth descending in fury upon Israel and all of that. So whether or not that's where the temple should be built, that certainly would end up fulfilling prophecy if they went that route. Another possibility is that is that there is space on the temple platform in between the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque, that the temple could be built in between them and not actually disturb those Islamic holy sites. And so, although that would still make
yeah, sure, that would
the
still,
Muslim Brotherhood upset.
yeah, that might piss off Hezbollah all over again, or Hamas, or
Okay, but
whichever.
maybe less so. I don't know. And I really, in truth, I think anywhere they built it would be
Sure,
offensive.
sure,
Right.
anywhere they, yeah,
So
you're right. So let me ask you this though: is there anything that we see from Scripture, anything else that lends itself to this idea of no, it has to be right here, or is it just on the temple mount?
yeah, that's the other thing is I don't know that I don't know. I mean, the Jews put a lot of uh, significance in the place where the Holy of Holies used to be, and rightly so, because wherever the Ark of the Covenant touches, we expect that piece of earth to be made holy in some way. Yeah. But we do know from the scriptures that the Ark of the Covenant
Traveled.
has touched a lot of places on the earth, and most of them we don't have even record of, which maybe could lead to the idea that maybe it's not that critical. Like
Right.
you could do like the Latter-day Saints do and build a temple anywhere that's
Right.
convenient. That's a possibility, but I don't know that they see that. Another possibility is we don't know all the places where the tabernacle was set up, but we do know at least one, which was in Shiloh. The tabernacle was there for quite a while, and that is actually where the red heifers are being kept right now. And there is a possibility. Uh, I don't know. I don't know what will happen, but there's a possibility that they um, could do the sacrifice there in Shiloh, and sprinkle the blood towards where the Holy of Holies was when the tabernacle was there, or
Right.
where they think it was. Um, so, but time will tell.
Well, that's the other question, right? If you're sprinkling it towards the Holy of Holies, or where it used to be, I mean, I'm not sure anybody really knows at this point, do they? I mean, you would have a general direction,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
and how accurate does that have to be, right?
Yeah. I don't know.
Israel, I'm just saying, you need a surveyor. I can find that angle for you.
You're volunteering your
I'm
services.
volunteering. I'm just saying, I'll do it.
How would that be? That would be amazing.
That'd be awesome.
So a confounding factor is that archaeological excavations and research is illegal on the Temple Mount.
Sure.
So we probably could learn a lot of things if digs were allowed there, or any kind of I don't know. I don't know exactly the rules there. Whether maybe they can they use ground penetrating radar but not actual digging. I don't know the details on that, but I do know that there is some hurdles there that and some questions that could likely be answered if that kind of thing were allowed. So there's some ambiguity there too. That's just part of the it adds to the complexity of the timing.
Sure.
So let's see.
So, did these cows come from Israel?
Okay, yeah, I'm glad you asked that. So yeah, the most recent ones came from Texas, which is interesting, because we believe this is where the Ephraim is
Right.
this is the land of Joseph,
Right.
right? So there's a guy, absolute stud. His name is Byron Stinson, and he's a cattle rancher, Texas, and he was contacted. He's very friendly towards Israel. He's a solid Christian man, but very positive on Israel. And this is actually interesting too, because um, there are a lot of Christian folks who believe that this is going to happen, but don't believe that it is a good thing. Like that believe that this is going to be like the nail in the coffin of those detestable Jews, and this is just going to be more condemnation that they would dare to offer any kind of sacrifice, after after the sacrifice of Jesus.
But Joseph Smith would take exception to that, right? Because
Right.
he says at some point the sons of Levi will once again offer sacrifices up in righteousness.
That's right. Yeah, and they will be purified. Yeah, and then this red heifer is the purification. And furthermore, Joseph says not only is this prophesied, like it's going to happen, because wicked things are prophesied too.
Sure.
So not only is this going to happen, but yeah, but it's, well, I mean, I guess that prophecy in Malachi doesn't really leave room for wickedness, because it says that God is going to purify them.
Yeah.
Like, and they're going to offer an offering in righteousness, not in wickedness. Like, this is going to be pleasing.
Right.
Now it is true. It is true that this is also going to bring
War.
war, and it's going to bring Antichrist. Because the Antichrist, according to prophecies we have in Daniel and in the New Testament, the Antichrist is going to sit in the temple.
Yep. And proclaim himself God.
Proclaim himself God. Yeah, which could be translated also judge. Okay, not necessarily deity, but that he or they or it or whatever the Antichrist is in charge or something, when they're really not. So there is kind of but then on the other hand, those prophecies about the Antichrist then are followed up by saying that immediately after this, then the actual Messiah comes and destroys the Antichrist, like
Right.
obliterates. And so, so that's something to look forward to there. So anyway, so I'm very positive on it. Like, I think this is what they should be doing. I think this is in keeping with the commandment that God gave to our ancestors. And I say not their ancestors, but our ancestors. But they have this stewardship and this job of doing it. So the Temple Institute, so Byron Stinson, he gets ear that they've been trying to get red cows, and he's like, well, I'm surrounded by red cows. I know lots of people have red cows, and I'll find you some red cows. And he decides he's gonna find 7. I think is what he first decides, and he says, hey, come on down.
I'm sorry. I just hold on. I just imagine, like this really orthodox rabbi coming up to this Texas rancher with a chaw in his mouth and like, I'll find you some red heifers.
Yeah. And he does, and it's amazing. So this is in like I don't know all the exact dates, but like 2021, 2022, in that time frame, when they first come out. And like, well, Byron's done some footwork ahead of time. He's called around to different ranchers, and he wants the reddest of the red cows, and he gathers up a bunch of them, and the rabbis come out, and they're just like, well, because the Temple Institute has been trying for years to grow a native, like a native born red heifer, and have not been successful. They have whatever stock they have just has a white hair gene as well.
How nuts would it be that it comes from the United States?
From the land of Joseph.
I mean, just bat crap crazy. Again, you would send this script to any producer, he'd be like, get this thing off my desk. This doesn't hold water at all. I mean, it's just too good.
Yeah. So an amazing happening with this is they came out, they found some cows that, some of the cows were very good. Some of them were probably eliminated right away. But they found a group of them that were good. And then they part of the reason they were good is because they had not been tagged. Now, my understanding of the law in Texas is that like there's like a
heavy fine, if I'm
there's
not
like
mistaken.
a warden, like a livestock warden, whatever, whose job is to go around to the ranches.
Yep.
And tag and serialize whatever all the animals that are born, so they have them all registered. But because this happened during COVID,
they weren't working.
the livestock warden was not doing in-person visits. That's right.
Interesting.
And these cows escaped being disqualified because of
The tag.
the COVID. Yeah, they did not get tagged because of COVID. And I mean, who knows? I mean, the confluence of events is
Ooh.
amazing, and it. I mean, it's amazing to think that it might have been that like this whole worldwide COVID thing was just to
Just
protect these
for
cows.
that.
Yeah, I mean, maybe so.
Just
I don't know.
for that. So when does Israel or the Temple Institute, whoever's responsible here for procuring the said red heifer,
Yeah.
when does it become, because it's my understanding right now that they got a couple, right, that
Yeah.
seem to meet everything.
Yeah, that's right. So he wanted to have seven initially. I think they found more than that, but he wanted to have seven to send. But the laws of dealing with livestock transfer between the U.S. and Israel is that it is not like you cannot sell livestock
Right.
at all. But they found another. There's a clause in there that says that you can transport pets, up to 5 pets. And so it turns out that they have 5 pet red heifers that they transported from the U.S. to Israel.
I'm just thinking of the guy on the plane who's so pissed because someone's got an emotional support red heifer.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's
I
right.
mean, I'm sure it was by boat, but I still
No,
can't
it was a
help.
flight.
It was a flight.
It was a flight. Yeah,
I'm sure.
10-hour flight.
I'm sure it was in a cargo. I mean,
Yeah, I don't know which plane, but there was difficulties there too. I've heard Byron talking about that in a video I watched of an interview he did, and there was some hurdles. Besides figuring out that loophole, and then they had to get like insurance
sure.
on the cows. But there's no insurance companies that insure cows because it's illegal to send cows. So they had to go. There's like months of delay, like trying to get an insurance company.
Have to go to Lloyd's of London or something. And
I don't know, but they ended up having to pay like there was delayed like months because they needed to pay like $1.25 per cow, like as in insurance or something like that.
$1.25.
I think that's what it was, if I remember right. Yeah.
Leave it to the government to hold this up for a
Uh,
buck 25.
it's ridiculous. I mean, that was all just eaten up in everyone's time, and what a waste. But they finally got them there, though. And it was, and it was kind of hush hush, where they were, and also exactly when they plan to do things. So I think it's actually known by some. They're in Shiloh, like in the area there, and I think actually people can go see them there, but they're guarded. Okay, and there's a good reason why they're guarded.
Oh yeah. I mean, look, if you're someone who's against Israel, I'm not going to name names. But if you're against Israel, I mean, you naturally do not want these cows making it out of Shiloh, right?
No way. Yeah. So I mean the war that Israel is involved in right now with Hamas,
Mm-hmm.
and Hezbollah is getting involved as well. Uh, at the 100-day mark of the war, right? The military spokesman for Hamas comes out and says that among their reasons for the attack is because Israel has red cows.
Wait. Okay,
Have
hold
you
on.
not you not heard that?
No, we gotta go back and I gotta make sure I understand this just right. So the lead, one of the generals of Hamas
Yeah.
said one of the reasons for the attacks was Israel had these red heifers.
Yeah, they were trying to murder those cows so that they could not be used for the purpose
Holy
for
cow.
their scriptural purpose. Holy cow, indeed.
Yeah. I didn't mean that, but now I meant that. Yeah. Well, here's the thing, right? And this is why when I get the response of, oh, they've been fighting for 1,000 years. That's all they know how to do. Oh, no. This runs very deep, right? And there's obviously something to this if your enemy is looking at it and like, we got to I can't believe I'm going to say this. A few things I never thought I'd say on the show. This is one of them. We got to take the cows out, right? That's their thoughts,
Yeah, that's right.
right? Is we take the cows out.
Yeah.
They can't sprinkle towards the holy of holies. They can't cleanse the priests,
Right. And their Messiah won't come.
and their Messiah won't come. Fascinating.
I think there's a long tradition of like just trying to prevent this. So interesting also in the Quran, the second chapter, the second surah, which is I understand the longest, is called the cow. That's the English.
Mm-hmm.
And in there it talks about the this cow that we're talking about. However, in the Quran it says God commanded Moses to offer this cow, a yellow cow, a bright yellow cow. That's what you need to do, a bright yellow cow.
That's funny.
It
That is hilarious. Like, no, you don't want one of them red ones. Let me show you one of these yellow ones here. This is the one you really need, is these yellow ones. Oh, that's fantastic. Well, and I can't claim responsibility for this. I learned this from someone else. I heard it from a talk show guy. I can't remember which one, but there's some interesting things with quote the the there's an imam that's supposed to come out of Mecca somewhere.
Okay.
And I can't remember. There was a number associated with him, and I can't remember. Maybe the seventh, ninth. I can't remember. Anyway, this imam would come forward, and he's like the Messiah figure, right? But the thing is, if you look at what he does, it matches up verbatim with what the Antichrist is.
Yeah.
I can't remember where I heard that, but I can't take credit for that. And I was always a bit skeptical of that idea, but now I tend to look at that and like, well, maybe. I mean, there's, yeah, no, it seems to be kind of a flip side, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, as Mormons, I think we would agree, or in there, like in the I can't remember which episode or not episode, but edition of like the Times and Seasons. It talks about the year that the Great Apostasy was complete.
Mm-hmm.
Was the year 570, which is 1,260 years from 1830. Okay, which is when this is how long in the book of Revelation 12. This is how long the woman is, banished to the wilderness by the dragon,
Right.
For that many years. So knowing that the year 570 like comes out of the math, but there's interesting things that happened with the Roman Church finally conquering the Celtic Church in the British Isles. So that happened in the year 570. That was kind of the last nail in the coffin of this independent branch of Christianity, and Rome kind of gained control of the Christian world. And also the year 570 is the year Muhammad was born.
Really?
Yeah, which, and I believe that I do believe Muhammad was God's servant.
Yeah.
In a similar way that Nebuchadnezzar was God's servant. In other words,
Right.
that he was an instrument of God's wrath to deal punishment for the murder of the saints and the
Gotcha.
persecution of his church.
Morgan Philpott had an interesting way of putting that. He's like, there's the right hand of God and the left hand of God.
Precisely.
And sometimes that left hand of God is the one that's responsible for afflicting his people when they need it.
Yeah.
And it's entirely possible that Islam and Muhammad was that inflicting arm, so to speak, to try to bring the Lord's people back to a remembrance, I guess.
Yeah. So, a couple more things, interesting, just types and shadows, of Jesus that I forgot to mention earlier. So one of the things that it's not supposed to carry a yoke,
Right?
and it's interesting that when Jesus is going to be crucified, that the beam is initially put on him, but he stumbles, and then someone else actually carries it for him to the. So that yoke is is taken off of him. Also, this is not in Numbers 19, but it is interesting that historically the red heifer was supposed to be purchased with funds from the temple treasury.
Okay.
So and Jesus was too, right? They paid.
Right. Yeah,
They
that's
paid for
right.
Jesus, right? But it has to be done under the supervision of the under like the watch of the high priest. Okay, but of course, the priests and the high priest, they didn't crucify Jesus, but they were watching. Right? It was the Romans who did it. But it doesn't have to be the priests that actually uh,
Okay.
uh, kill the red cow. Cleaning up a couple of other types and shadows in this sacrifice of the red heifer that were fulfilled by Jesus. So I mentioned the yoke thing.
Right.
I don't know if that was captured, but it cannot carry a yoke.
Right.
And so in Jesus's case, when he's being led out to Gethsemane, they try to put the crossbeam of the crucifix on him for him to carry as though it were a yoke. But he stumbles and he ends up not carrying the yoke.
Right.
Someone else does. So, he is his qualifications are preserved, so to speak.
Gotcha.
Another one that's interesting is that this was kind of a lot of the other offerings are like private, individual offerings, like people would bring their own animals or whatever. But this one was for the whole nation, and so as a result of that, uh, it was supposed to be purchased with money from the temple treasury,
Right.
which is there's echoes of Jesus there being purchased
Absolutely.
with price paid to Judas to obtain him.
Absolutely. There's something else you said that I want to go back to that I found interesting. And it was this purification ritual here, this ordinance, doesn't require a Levite. It can be anybody.
That's right. Yeah. In Numbers 19, it just says a man. Let's see. So it says this is in Numbers chapter 19, verse 3. You shall give her, meaning the cow, to the high priest, that he may bring her forth without the camp, and then one or a man shall slay her before his face. So the high priest just leads the cow and then observes or oversees the killing of the cow. But it can just be done by anyone.
That's fascinating.
Which is interesting because of course Jesus wasn't killed by the Jews. He wasn't killed by the high priest or the Sanhedrin. He was killed by the Romans.
Right.
But under their observation, right?
Right.
With their they acquiesced to it and encouraged it and were observing it, which is what is required of the red heifer sacrifice.
Right. Yeah.
The other interesting one is that the Holy of Holies needs to be exposed. So again, this is not necessarily in the scripture, but they are supposed to do it in front of the door, like facing the doorway. And the rabbis, their interpretation was that the doors and the curtains should be open so that whoever's doing the sacrifice can see all the way into the Holy of Holies or where the Holy of Holies was. And of course, when Jesus is crucified, there is a parting of the
veil.
The
right.
veil.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, a lot of Christians, I think, interpret that to mean, oh, well, now what that means is that anyone can just go in to God's presence willy-nilly. That's not really what it means. What it means is that Jesus was fulfilling the requirements of the red heifer so that he could be a cleansing from death for us, right? And this was one of the elements.
So let me ask you this though, and I might be getting off in the weeds here. With this idea of opening the door, right? So that ordinance takes effect, I guess. If the Holy of Holies sits where the Dome of the Rock is, how's that going to work?
Although, like as far as like being visible,
Yeah.
I don't know. That's an interesting question. I don't know if they've dealt with that,
Okay.
or I mean, I'm sure they have. The rabbis
Right.
think of everything, many
Right.
things. So yeah, but I don't know the answer to that. It's an interesting question.
Yeah. Just I'm spitballing here, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hmm. Maybe the dome of the rock needs to be dynamited first, so it's exposed, right?
Right.
I
Right.
mean, there are probably some folks who think that, and
Yep.
we go back to World War III that we talked about. Um, so
So what's the outcome then of all of this entire prophecy? I mean, well, before we go there, let me ask you this. Was there anything else that you had?
Oh, then one more, and this is just kind of interesting side note is once you have uh, the impurity of death upon you, what's the soonest that you can be cleansed from it? And the answer is 3 days. You
Right.
you contract the impurity of death, and then you have to wait 3 days, and then the impurity of death is removed. And so this just has echoes, of course, of the resurrection as well.
Right.
Yeah, and one last thing. We talked about how Jesus. Uh, so so I said there's kind of going to be two tenth heifers,
Right.
right? Jesus does this spiritual version that allows us kind of entrance into the heavenly temple. I would say,
Right.
or like I would say, you could even say the Melchizedek version.
Right.
Okay, but then there's going to be the Aaronic version as well, which Byron Stinson, the man, has is facilitated in large part. But and that's supposed to bring the Messiah. And then when the Messiah comes back, again, he's going to be dressed in
Right.
red. Yeah. So again, to show, I think, as a symbolic nod to his position as the one that the sacrifice of the red heifers has been pointing towards. Yeah.
Interesting. So right now, those red heifers have passed muster.
Yeah. But the clock is ticking
Right.
because they aren't getting any younger. They got five of those pets into Israel. One of them has been disqualified
Okay, so they're
already.
down to four.
Yep, because of white white hairs growing on its tail or whatever. So they're down to four, and we don't know exactly when. Some people, there have been several guesses as to like when the most likely time is. Um, with the a while ago, I think it was last Saturday actually. Every week there's a different portion of the Torah that's read at the synagogues, and Numbers 19 I think was read recently, and they thought that might have been a good day, but that day has passed. And then like the beginning of the month, which is going to be at the eclipse, like the ecclesiastical New Year,
Right.
which is a notable day. That's a possibility. Passover is a very strong possibility. But even beyond Passover, up until Shavuot, um, is still a possibility.
Wow.
So sometime between now, likely Passover, but Shavuot which is like going to be 50 days. That's the Pentecost. It's going to be another strong possibility. And we don't know, and they're not.
I can't imagine that if Israel's in the state it is in right now, that we'll know about it until it's over.
Yeah, I can't imagine they're going to broadcast that right until it's done. Yeah,
Right.
exactly, because knowing that the intent of Hamas is to prevent that from happening, then you keep those cards close to
Pretty,
your chest.
yeah, yeah, you play that close to the vest for sure. That's fascinating. And just look, we got the eclipse coming up this week. We have this thing going on with the red heifer. Israel's at war. Um, we have we have even America, right? Kamala Harris a couple weekends ago came out and said Israel better not, I can't remember if it was Jaffa or where, but said you shouldn't go here or else there could be consequences. I mean, it's getting kind of spooky now, right?
Right.
Now, like it almost feels like it's no longer academic, right? That
Yeah.
now we're dealing with conditions on the ground,
It's like, yeah, the heat's been turned up from low to medium on
right?
the simmering pot.
Right. I asked you jokingly earlier on. You got a time and date now, right? And certainly none of us are going to know the exact time and date. But I think there's mile markers along the way
Mhm.
that you can check those off,
Yeah.
right? I think one of the big ones, obviously, the restoration, right? We have the establishment of Israel as an actual state again. And now we seem to be checking these other boxes that are very, very specific
Yes.
to these end times events. And I think it's just one of those things we got to kind of check off the box, right? And it gets spooky, but at the same time, it's exciting,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yeah, and you, there's another quote. I had it, but I can't find it. But you've probably heard it. Joseph Smith says it's going to take before the coming of the Lord. It's going to take some time
Yep.
to build the temple and to do the offerings and to have the Dead Sea healed and and all of the things that we need to have the two prophets that are preaching in the streets and for 3 years or whatever it is, 3.5 years and slain and there's there's things in the restoration that we know about that the meeting at Adam on Diamond and so there's definitely still things that need to happen, but like you said, like the heat's been turned up. And even if the temple is not going to be built, even if Armageddon is not going to be next month, the red heifer still could be sacrificed.
Yeah.
This month or next month, and they can hang on to those ashes, and that's just one step closer to the building of the
And,
temple and all the other things.
yeah, and one of the things I've noticed is like every time we check a box off, so to speak, things begin to accelerate even faster, right?
Right.
The kind of a law of accelerated returns definitely seems to apply with prophecy, because as those things get checked off, it's like the next one, it's not that far away, right? It's just around the corner.
Right.
And so when you look at that, you've you've really got to wonder, okay, so if we got this red heifer, right? I can't imagine that given the current state of things in Israel, right? This war, I'm not sure they're going to just wait until things settle down,
Right.
right? I could see this happening very quickly. And as you were just pointing out, there's a couple of big holidays coming up, Passover being perhaps the biggest, right? And so if word gets out that this has been done, I could see how this could accelerate other things, right?
Right.
And that's how the scriptures lay it out. The woman in travail, right? About to give birth, right? Those birth pangs. Obviously, I've never had a kid, but I've watched it a few times, right? And it starts out with small contractions spaced very far apart,
There's a little stone rolling down the mountain.
right? And then towards the end, right before the event, the birth pangs are more pronounced, they're stronger, and they're closer together.
Intense.
And
The intensity.
I think while certainly there is the hand of divinity in that, also I think it might just be an outcome of checking these boxes off, right? Because obviously if Hamas or Hezbollah get word that hey, Israel just did this ordinance, now all of a sudden you're on the clock.
Yeah.
Right? If you're Hezbollah, if you're Hamas, you are now on the clock, because at any given moment, this could signify one of two things. We're going to set a new temple right in between the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque, or war gets so bad that Israel and look, Israel's not screwing around this time, right? I mean, if there's one thing that I'm ashamed of about being an American, it's been our foreign policy towards Israel. We got hit once and took out two countries. These folks have been dealing with it for decades. So, and they don't seem to be screwing around this time. That stuff that happened in October lit a fire. And whether people like Netanyahu or not, the conditions are the ground are, doesn't matter if he's in office or not. They're still doing the same thing.
We're doing this.
And so, given all those factors, right, I can't imagine if word got out that that got done, if that would not again accelerate. And I also believe we live in a time where there are no more secrets.
Oh no,
Right?
I mean,
Everything
it
is
would
out.
get out.
Yes. And so
100%.
it's one of those things that's going to get very interesting. And then we have this eclipse lining up with all of this, right? That seemed to have some pretty significant, you know, signs, I guess, to it.
Yeah.
Um, all of that in mind is one of those things where I'm like, we better get our crap together in a hurry because there's a lot that's going to take place. But dude, good stuff.
Yeah. I got one more thing to say.
Okay.
Just gonna put in a little plug for the Restoration Torah Conference.
Nice. Go ahead.
So yeah, that's coming up. The Restoration Torah Conference is going to be Shavuot, which I mentioned is one of the potential dates. It's going to be in the middle of June this year, so June 14th and 15th is going to be the conference. It'll be in Utah, in Riverton. It's going to be at the Nelson Naylor Meeting House,
Nice.
the third ward there. And so if you're interested to hear more about uh, Israel and the Torah and how those things mesh together with the Restoration and Mormonism, then this will be the event for you. And I would encourage anyone to come. It's free. So spread the word. You can find out more about the conference and register tickets at restorationtorahconference.org. I believe there's all the information there about the dates and times, the speakers, and also how to get yourself tickets.
Nice.
So
Nice. And that can be watched online as well, right?
yes, we're also going to broadcast it by Zoom. We've done that in the past. Hopefully, we don't have any technical difficulties. We did not last year, but the year before that, I guess. But hopefully, we got those ironed out. So
Nice. Well, dude, good stuff.
yeah, pleasure as always.
Always.
Yeah.
Dude, awesome. All right. Bye, everybody.